2 days after the first contact, Admiral Susan Miller sat in a windowless room deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The old NORAD bunker had been quickly converted into a secure meeting place, free from possible alien surveillance. Around a long, metal table sat 12 people, military leaders, scientists, and government officials from 7 countries. "The public announcement goes out tomorrow," said Ben Franklin, wiping his glasses nervously. "Earth has agreed to the Council's terms, and disarmament will begin next week." Susan leaned forward. "But we all know what we're really doing." The group nodded. While world leaders had publicly accepted the Galactic Council's offer, this small group had been authorized to pursue an alternative path. They called it Project Firewall. "Dr. Jason Carter, please brief everyone on your findings," Susan said. Man with curly brown hair and tired eyes stood up. He was only 35 but already considered one of Earth's top physicists. "I've analyzed the data from the alien ships," Jason said, tapping a tablet to project images onto the wall. "They use an energy system we've never seen before. It's not nuclear, not chemical. It seems to pull energy directly from, well, from nothing. From empty space itself." "Is that even possible?" asked General Li from the Chinese Space Command. "According to our physics, no," Jason replied. "But they're doing it. And here's the interesting part. When I compared readings from all 17 alien species ships, they all use the same basic technology. Different designs, but identical energy signatures." Susan considered this. "So they all share the same technology base?" "Exactly," Jason said. "And that gives us an opportunity. If we can understand their energy systems, we might find a weakness, something they all share." Ben looked doubtful. "We're talking about 17 species that have been in space for thousands of years. How could we possibly catch up?" "Because they've stopped innovating," said a new voice. A woman with short red hair stood up from the end of the table. "I'm Dr. Kate Young, Xenolinguistics. I've been studying their language and communication patterns." She pulled up her own data. "Their language contains almost no words for innovation or creative problem solving. They have words for improvement and efficiency, but nothing that translates to breakthrough or revolution. It's like they've reached a technological plateau and stopped pushing boundaries. Meanwhile, humans are messy, creative problem solvers," Jason added. "We don't always take the most efficient path. Sometimes that means we fail, but sometimes we discover things nobody else would find." Susan nodded slowly. "So, while we publicly disarm, we secretly develop completely new technology they might not expect," Jason finished. "Not hiding our existing weapons. That's what they'll be looking for. Instead, creating something entirely different." The room was quiet as everyone considered this plan. It was bold, perhaps even desperate. "We need 3 teams," Susan finally said. "One to handle the public disarmament, keeping the aliens satisfied, another to gather intelligence on the Council, and a third to develop these new technologies. We'll need a secure facility," General Li said. "Somewhere their sensors can't penetrate." "Already found one," Ben replied. "An abandoned mine system in Wyoming. We've discovered that 6 miles of solid rock blocks their scanning technology. We're setting up labs there now." "What about resources?" asked Colonel Petrov from Russia. "This won't be cheap." "Each participating nation has pledged secret funds," Ben said. "Officially, nuclear disarmament is expensive. That's our cover for the money." Susan looked around the table. "I won't lie to you, this is a massive gamble. If the Council discovers what we're doing, they could implement that containment field immediately. Earth would be trapped." "And if we do nothing?" Jason asked. "We give up our ability to defend ourselves based on the promises of aliens we just met." Kate nodded. "I've been studying their historical records they shared. 17 founding species, but they mentioned trading with over 40. Where are those other species now? Why aren't they Council members?" The implication hung heavy in the air. "Let's put it to a vote," Susan said. "All in favor of Project Firewall?" Every hand went up. 1 week later, Jason Carter rode an elevator deep into the Wyoming mine. What had once been a search for uranium was now Earth's most secret research facility. The elevator doors opened to reveal a massive underground complex. Tunnels stretched in every direction, newly fitted with lights and air systems. Hundreds of people hurried about carrying equipment or hunched over computers. "Welcome to Firewall Base," said Kate, meeting him at the elevator. "We've got over 300 scientists and engineers down here already. How's the shielding? Holding up?" Jason asked as they walked. "So far, so good. The aliens' regular scans of Earth haven't detected anything. We think the unique mineral composition in these rocks blocks their sensors." They entered the main lab area, a cavern the size of a football field filled with equipment. In the center sat a piece of technology that didn't look human, a small silver cylinder. "Is that?" Jason began. "Yes," Kate said quietly. "We managed to recover a piece of debris from one of their landing craft. It fell off during takeoff. It's tiny, just an access panel or something. But it's authentic alien tech." Jason approached it slowly, almost reverently. "This changes everything. An actual piece we can study." He spent the next 12 hours examining the material with every instrument available. Near midnight, he called for Kate and Susan. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a microscope display. "The molecular structure changes when energy passes through it. It's like it remembers the energy pattern." "What does that mean for us?" Susan asked. "It means," Jason said with growing excitement, "that we might be able to create a device that recognizes and disrupts their energy systems, a key to their technology." "How long?" Susan asked. Jason looked at the teams of scientists already gathering around various workstations. 6 months minimum. We'll need to build new tools to even understand how this works." Susan nodded. "You have 4 months. The council representatives are coming back then for a progress check on our disarmament." On the surface, the world continued, changing. Military bases were closing. Nuclear weapons were being dismantled under alien supervision. Council ships maintained a constant presence in orbit, monitoring compliance. But deep underground, humanity was working on something the Galactic Council never expected, a completely new approach to an ancient problem. "We're not going to outgun them," Jason told his team late one night, "but we might just outsmart them." The sun rose over Houston Space Command just like any other day. Admiral Susan Miller walked through the glass doors of Mission Control with her morning coffee. The room buzzed with the usual activity, screens showing orbital paths, technicians monitoring the International Space Station, and duty officers checking systems. "Morning, Admiral," said Lieutenant Jack Davis, her aide. "The ISS reports all systems normal." Susan nodded and took a sip of her coffee. 20 years in space defense had taught her to appreciate quiet mornings. She had risen through the ranks during the Second Cold War and now commanded Earth's modest orbital defense network, 12 satellites and the small ISS defense module. The calm morning shattered when every alarm in Mission Control triggered at once. "Massive energy reading," shouted the sensor officer. "Something's appearing above the ISS." The main screen showed a real-time feed from the space station cameras. A patch of space seemed to fold inward, creating a dark oval that grew rapidly. From this strange opening emerged a massive ship, sleek, silver, and unlike anything built by human hands. It was at least a mile long with no visible engines or windows. "Get the president on the line," Susan ordered, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "And contact the ISS crew immediately." Before anyone could respond, every screen in Mission Control changed to show the same image, a humanoid figure, with pale blue skin, large eyes and no visible hair. "People of Earth," the figure spoke in perfect English. "I am Ambassador Kralthex of the Arcturian Dominion, representing the Galactic Council. We come in peace, and with an offer of membership in our interstellar community." The room fell silent. First contact. After centuries of wondering, humanity finally had its answer. They were not alone. "We request a meeting with your planetary leadership in 12 hours, the ambassador continued. "Coordinates for the meeting location will follow. We look forward to beginning diplomatic relations." The screens returned to normal, leaving the Mission Control staff staring at each other in shock. "Well," Susan said, breaking the silence. I guess I need a better outfit for meeting aliens. The next 12 hours passed in a blur. World leaders gathered in emergency session. The United Nations Security Council met continuously. Military forces around the world went on high alert. Susan found herself on a transport to Geneva with the American delegation, which included the president, key cabinet members, and a hastily assembled team of scientists. The meeting location turned out to be a large field outside Geneva, where 3 smaller vessels from the main alien ship had landed. A temporary structure had been erected, a simple dome with transparent walls. Inside, representatives from every major nation on Earth waited nervously. Susan stood with the American delegation, watching as a door opened in the side of the closest vessel. 7 different alien beings emerged. They varied wildly in appearance. One looked almost human except for gold-colored skin, while another resembled a giant praying mantis. Ambassador Kralthex led them, his blue skin shimmering slightly under the dome lights. "Thank you for joining us," the ambassador said, his mouth not quite matching the words they heard. "Some kind of translation technology," Susan guessed. "We represent the 17 founding species of the Galactic Council, an alliance spanning over 3,000 star systems." The aliens took seats across from the human delegation. The meeting began with introductions and expressions of peaceful intent. The aliens explained they had monitored Earth for centuries, waiting until humanity reached a certain technological threshold before making contact. "Your recent developments in quantum computing and fusion energy indicate you are ready for the next step," said a bird-like alien who introduced himself as First Minister Trill. For the first hour, everything seemed positive. The Galactic Council offered access to advanced medicine, clean energy technology, and faster-than-light travel. Earth would become the 18th founding member, with all the benefits that entailed. Then came the condition. "There is, of course, one requirement for membership," Ambassador Kralthex said, his large eyes blinking slowly. "All council members must adhere to the Pax Galactica, complete disarmament of all weapons of mass destruction, and reduction of military forces to minimal levels needed for internal security only." The human delegates exchanged glances. Susan felt a chill run down her spine. "You're asking us to disarm completely?" the American president asked. "While we're just meeting you for the first time?" "We understand your concern," Kralthex replied, smoothly. "The Council has encountered this reaction before. New species often feel vulnerable initially. But consider our position. We cannot admit a potentially aggressive species with nuclear weapons into a peaceful galactic community. The risk is too great." "How much time would we have for this disarmament?" asked the Russian president. "1 Earth year," answered the mantis-like alien. "We believe this is generous. Your nuclear arsenals could be dismantled in months with our technical assistance." Susan watched as the world leaders tried to mask their unease. She had spent her career defending Earth, and now aliens were asking them to simply stop. "And if we refuse?" asked the Chinese premier. The gold-skinned alien leaned forward. "Then Earth would remain quarantined, as it has been. We would establish a containment field preventing any spacecraft from traveling beyond your moon. This field would remain for 1,000 years, after which time we would reassess." The dome fell silent. The choice was clear: disarm and join the galactic community, or remain isolated in the solar system for a millennium. "We will need time to discuss this among ourselves," the UN Secretary-General finally said. "Of course," Ambassador Kralthex replied. "We will return to our vessel and await your response. You have 24 hours to provide your initial answer, whether you accept the terms in principle. Details can be arranged afterward." After the aliens departed, heated debate broke out among the Earth delegates. Susan listened as leaders argued back and forth about trust, opportunity, and security. During a break, Susan stepped outside the dome for fresh air. She gazed up at the massive alien ship visible in the daytime sky. "What do you think, Admiral?" asked Ben Franklin, the president's national security advisor, who had followed her outside. Susan kept her eyes on the ship. "I think they're hiding something. No one gives technology that advanced without wanting something in return. The opportunity is incredible, though, Ben said. Interstellar travel, advanced medicine, clean energy, at the cost of our ability to defend ourselves, Susan replied. In my experience, when someone wants you to disarm, it's rarely for your benefit. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the field, Susan couldn't shake the feeling that humanity stood at a dangerous crossroads. The stars had finally answered, but she wasn't sure she liked what they had to say. We need a plan B, she whispered to herself as she walked back to the dome. And we need it fast. 3 months passed quickly. On the surface, Earth continued its disarmament process. Military bases converted to civilian use. Soldiers returned home to find new jobs. News channels showed footage of nuclear missiles being taken apart under the watchful eyes of Galactic Council observers. Deep underground in the Wyoming facility, now nicknamed the Bunker by those who worked there, progress moved forward at an incredible pace. The 300 scientists had grown to nearly 1,000. The main cavern now housed dozens of experimental setups, each testing different aspects of the alien technology. Amy Foster walked through the busy lab area, carrying a tablet with her latest findings. Unlike most of the scientists, Amy wasn't there for her technical skills. A diplomat by training, she had been assigned to the Galactic Council's verification team as Earth's liaison. Her real job was to gather information. She found Jason Carter exactly where she expected, hunched over what they now called the memory metal, the small piece of alien technology they had recovered. You need to see this, Amy said, sliding her tablet in front of him. Jason looked up, his eyes red from lack of sleep. What am I looking at? Council communications I managed to intercept during yesterday's inspection tour of the Pacific nuclear facility. The tablet showed a series of symbols that looked like flowing water. Amy had developed a program to translate the alien language. They're discussing Earth's status after disarmament, Amy said quietly. They're not planning to make us full members, Jason. Not now, not ever. Jason scanned through the translated text, his face growing darker. Resource world? Amy nodded. That's their designation for us. After we disarm, they plan to establish resource extraction protocols. They're talking about mining operations across all continents. They estimate Earth can provide raw materials for at least 300 years. What about humans? We'll be allowed to remain in designated habitation zones. The rest of the planet will be converted for their use. Jason put down the tablet and removed his glasses, rubbing his tired eyes. We need to tell Susan immediately. An hour later, the core team of Project Firewall gathered in a small conference room. Admiral Susan Miller listened without interruption as Amy explained what she had discovered. Are you certain about the translation? Susan finally asked. Completely, Amy replied. And there's more. I searched their historical database using the term resource world. I found 17 other planets that went through exactly what we're experiencing now. She projected images of alien worlds onto the wall. Beautiful planets with oceans, forests, and signs of civilization. These are the before images, Amy said. Then she swiped to show the same planets years later. Vast open pit mines scarred the surfaces. Massive factories belched smoke into once clear skies. And these are after. The room fell silent. What happened to the original inhabitants? Asked Kate Young. Those who cooperated became laborers, Amy said. Those who resisted disappeared. Susan's face hardened. They've done this before. Multiple times. This isn't about peace. It's about conquest without firing a shot. We need to speed up our work, Jason said. The question is, what do we tell the world leaders? Everything, Susan replied without hesitation. They need to know what we're really facing. Ben Franklin shook his head. Some might panic. Others might want to launch whatever weapons we have left. That would be suicide. Then we give them a reason not to panic, Susan said, turning to Jason. How close are you to a breakthrough? Jason exchanged glances with his team. We've mapped the energy signatures from all 17 Council species technology. They all use the same quantum frequency patterns, just as we suspected. We're developing a device that can generate a counter frequency. In simple terms, Susan asked. A disruption field, Jason explained. It would render their technology temporarily inoperable. Ships, weapons, communication devices, anything using their standard energy systems would just stop working. How long until it's ready? 2 more months minimum, Jason said. But the Council inspection team is due back in 3 weeks to check our disarmament progress. Susan stood up and paced the small room. Then we stall. We keep them believing we're complying. Amy, you'll be crucial for this. Keep them focused on our visible disarmament efforts. Amy nodded. I can do that. Meanwhile, Susan continued, we need a fallback plan. If the disruption device doesn't work, we need conventional options. We've been hiding certain military assets, Ben said. Submarines that never returned to port. Aircraft that officially crashed but actually landed at secret bases. Not enough to win a war, but enough to show we won't go quietly. Over the next 3 weeks, Amy Foster played her role perfectly. She guided the Council inspection teams to exactly the places they wanted to see. She provided detailed reports on disarmament progress. All the while, she continued gathering intelligence and passing it back to the bunker. On her 4th inspection tour with Council representatives, Amy noticed something concerning. The aliens were taking soil samples at every location. Standard procedure, explained a being named Zix, whose species resembled a cross between a human and a dolphin. We check for contamination. But Amy's suspicions were raised. That evening, she managed to scan one of their sample containers with a hidden device. The results confirmed her fears. They weren't testing for contamination. They were assessing mineral content, resource mapping. Back at the bunker, her news accelerated everything. They're already planning the mining operations, Susan said. We're running out of time. Jason had barely slept in days. We need at least 2 more weeks to finish the prototype. You have one, Susan replied. I've just received word from the president. The Council has moved up their timetable. They're sending their entire fleet. All 17 capital ships will be in Earth orbit 1 week from today for what they're calling a membership ceremony. Kate Young looked up from her workstation. That's not a ceremony. That's an invasion. Force. Susan nodded grimly. Exactly. 1 week from now, they'll either accept our apparent surrender or they'll begin their resource extraction plan by force. Jason turned to his team. We work in shifts, 24 hours a day, no breaks, no delays. For the next 7 days, the bunker became a hive of non-stop activity. Engineers built components. Programmers wrote code. Physicists calculated precise frequencies. Some people worked until they literally collapsed from exhaustion, only to be carried to cots where they slept for a few hours before returning to work. On the 6th day, Jason called Susan and Amy to the main lab. It's ready, he said. He looked terrible, unshaven with dark circles under his eyes. But he was smiling as he pointed to a device on the table. It looked surprisingly simple, a metal sphere about the size of a baseball with a smooth, featureless surface. That's it? Amy asked. That's it, Jason confirmed. The quantum disruption device. It contains the counter-frequency patterns for all 17 Council species technology. How powerful is it? Susan asked. This prototype has a range of about 1 mile, Jason explained. But we've designed it to be scalable. With more power, we could extend the effect to cover an entire fleet in orbit. Susan picked up the device, feeling its weight. And you're sure it works? We tested it on the memory metal sample. It works. But there's only one way to be certain about their actual ships. Susan nodded, understanding. We'll need to get this onto one of their vessels. I have an idea about that, Amy said. Tomorrow is the ceremony. They've requested Earth's representatives bring a symbolic gift. What better gift than a demonstration of exactly what humanity is capable of? The morning of the ceremony arrived with clear blue skies over Geneva. The 17 council ships hung in the sky like silver stars, visible even in daylight. On the ground, a large area had been prepared for what the aliens called the Ascension ceremony. A raised platform stood in the center of a field, surrounded by thousands of chairs for world leaders, diplomats, and selected members of the public. Susan Miller adjusted her dress uniform as she waited in a nearby building with the Earth delegation. The small metal sphere, their only hope, sat in a simple wooden box lined with velvet. It looked like nothing special, just a polished silver ball. "Remember the plan," Susan whispered to Amy Foster. "We present the gift, you activate it with the code phrase, then we see if it works." Amy nodded. She wore a formal diplomatic outfit, her red hair pulled back neatly. "And if it doesn't work?" "Then Ben activates Plan B," Susan replied. Their hidden military assets would make a last stand, even knowing it was hopeless against such advanced technology. The Earth delegation consisted of 12 people, representatives from major nations, military leaders, and scientific advisors. Jason Carter stood nearby, looking uncomfortable in a formal suit. His eyes kept drifting to the wooden box. "It will work," he said quietly. "It has to." A chime sounded, indicating it was time. The delegation walked out onto the field. Thousands of people watched from the seats. Millions more viewed the event on screens around the world. The entire planet held its breath, believing this was a moment of great achievement, Earth joining the galactic community. Only a few hundred people knew the truth. The council representatives waited on the platform. All 17 species were represented, standing in a semicircle. Ambassador Kralthek stood in the center, his blue skin shimmering in the sunlight. "Welcome, people of Earth," the ambassador's voice boomed across the field. "Today marks a historic occasion. Your world has proven its commitment to peace by completing the disarmament process. You stand ready to join the greater galactic family." Susan knew this was a lie. Earth had not actually completed disarmament. They had only made it appear so. And according to Amy's intelligence, there would be no joining a family, only exploitation. Chiati. Earth delegation climbed the steps to the platform. The president stepped forward first. "On behalf of humanity, we thank the Galactic Council for this opportunity," he said, following the script they had agreed upon. "We present a small token of our appreciation and commitment to peace." He gestured to Susan, who stepped forward with the wooden box. She opened it, revealing the silver sphere. "This represents the ingenuity of human craftsmanship," Susan said, carefully lifting the device. "A symbol of our technological achievement and our hope for the future." She held it out to Ambassador Kralthek. The blue alien reached for it with long, slender fingers. As their hands briefly touched during the exchange, Amy Foster spoke clearly. "May this gift bring light to the darkness," she said. This was the activation phrase. For a moment, nothing happened. Susan felt her heart sink. Had they failed? Then, simultaneously, every alien on the platform flinched. Their communication devices emitted high-pitched sounds. The Grand Arbiter, a crystalline being who rarely spoke, actually stumbled backward. "Ambassador." Kralthek stared at the sphere in his hands with widening eyes. "What is this?" he asked, his voice no longer smooth and confident. Susan smiled. "Just a small example of human innovation." Suddenly, the massive view screens around the field flickered. They had been showing the ceremony, but now they displayed something else, the interior of the council ships in orbit. The images showed confusion and panic as systems shut down. Emergency lights flashed. Alien crew members floated in suddenly zero-gravity environments. "What have you done?" Kralthek demanded, his voice rising. "We've created a quantum disruption field," Jason Carter said, stepping forward. "It targets the specific energy signatures used by all council technology." The sphere in the ambassador's hands began to glow softly. The effect was spreading, growing stronger. "Impossible," said the insect-like representative. "Your species cannot possibly understand our quantum systems." "But we do," Amy replied. "We not only understand them, we found their weakness. You've all been using the same basic technology for thousands of years. You stopped innovating, we didn't. On the screens, more systems failed on the orbiting ships, weapons platforms powered down, engine systems went dark. The mighty council, fleet hung helpless in space. Turn it off, Krelthex demanded. This is an act of aggression. No, Susan said firmly. This is an act of self-defense. We know what you really planned for Earth. We've seen what happened to the other resource worlds. The alien delegation grew still. The Grand Arbiter stepped forward, crystal body catching the sunlight in rainbow patterns. How did you learn of this? The Arbiter asked, voice sounding like chimes in the wind. We did what humans do best, Jason explained. We got curious. We asked questions. We looked beyond the surface. Amy held up her tablet, displaying translated council communications. We know everything. Your plans to mine our planet, the habitation zones where survivors would live, the 300-year extraction timeline. The crowd watching the ceremony had grown silent, confused by this unexpected turn. The president stepped forward to address them. People of Earth, what you are witnessing is not what it appears, he announced. The Galactic Council came not as friends, but as conquerors. They demanded our disarmament not for peace, but to leave us defenseless before their exploitation. Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd. On the screens, the council ships continued to drift powerless. What are your demands? The Grand Arbiter asked, turning back to the human delegation. Susan nodded to Amy, who handed the Arbiter a small data crystal. These are our terms. Earth will join the galactic community, but as equals, not as subjects. All 17 resource worlds will be granted immediate freedom and restoration. A new galactic constitution will be created that protects the rights of all species. The Arbiter studied the crystal. And if we refuse? The disruption field is just our first innovation, Jason said. We have others. We've already sent similar devices to your homeworlds via automated drones using your own faster-than-light technology. They're currently inactive, but if necessary. He left the threat unspoken. This is blackmail, hissed one of the Reptilian Council members. This is negotiation, Amy corrected. Something you never intended to offer us. The Grand Arbiter raised a crystalline hand for silence. We must discuss this among ourselves. Of course, Susan agreed. But be aware that the disruption field will remain active until we reach an agreement. Your ships can maintain life support on backup systems, but nothing else will function. The alien delegation huddled together, speaking in rapid, clicking languages. The human delegation waited, tense but hopeful. Finally, the Grand Arbiter turned, back to them. The Council reluctantly agrees to consider your terms. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was a beginning. The balance of power had shifted in a way no one could have predicted. The species that had been deemed too primitive had outsmarted a 1,000-year-old system of exploitation. As the aliens departed to begin negotiations, Susan looked up at the powerless ships in orbit, then back at the small silver sphere that had changed everything. Not bad for a primitive species, she said with a smile. 1 month after the Geneva ceremony, representatives from Earth and the Galactic Council gathered on neutral ground, a space station built specifically for the negotiations. The station orbited halfway between Earth and the Moon, its curved windows offering views of both worlds. Susan Miller sat at the large round table, flanked by Amy Foster and Jason Carter. Across from them sat the Galactic Council delegation, reduced now to 7 representatives instead of 17. The mood was tense but respectful. The final terms have been agreed upon, announced the mediator, a being from a neutral species not affiliated with the Council. If both parties accept, the new Galactic Charter will take effect immediately. Susan looked down at the document before her. After weeks of intense negotiations, Earth had secured terms that would have been unimaginable just months ago. The Grand Arbiter, still impressive in crystalline form, spoke first. The Council acknowledges that our previous approach was flawed. We recognize Earth as a full and equal member of the galactic community with all rights and protections thereof. Amy smiled slightly. That acknowledgement had been hard-won. The Council initially refused to admit any wrongdoing. Only when human representatives visited the first of the resource worlds and saw the devastation firsthand did the Council finally concede. Furthermore, continued the Arbiter, we agree to the immediate release and restoration of all worlds previously designated for resource extraction. Reparations will be paid based on the schedule outlined in Section 7. Jason leaned towards Susan and whispered, they're actually going through with it. The mediator continued reading the terms. Open technology sharing between all species, democratic representation in the new Galactic Assembly, and a truth commission to document past Council actions. Most importantly, the document recognized the right of all species to maintain defensive capabilities proportional to potential threats. Earth would not disarm completely but would join a mutual defense pact that protected all member worlds. If there are no objections, the mediator said, representatives may now sign the charter. One by one, each delegate pressed their hand, appendage or sensing organ to the document, registering their agreement according to their species' customs. When Susan's turn came, she paused before placing her palm on the page. This moment changes not just Earth's future, but the future of all worlds, she said. We hope it begins an era of true cooperation. After the signing, the delegates moved to a large observation lounge for a more informal gathering. Through the windows, Earth shone blue and white against the blackness of space. Susan found herself standing next to Ambassador Kralthex, whose attitude had shifted considerably during the negotiations. Your species continues to surprise us, the blue-skinned alien said. None before have changed the course of galactic politics so quickly. We're adaptable, Susan replied. It's our greatest strength. And your technology, Kralthex said, lowering his voice. The disruption field. My scientists still cannot determine how it functions. 17 species with thousands of years of combined knowledge. Yet your people developed something completely new in months. Necessity, Susan explained. When survival is at stake, humans become remarkably creative. Across the room, Jason was deep in conversation with representatives from several species, explaining principles of quantum physics that the Council had never explored. Amy sat with a group of former Resource World delegates, helping coordinate their restoration efforts. The party continued late into the night. When most delegates had departed, Susan found herself alone in the observation lounge. A soft chime announced a visitor, the Grand Arbiter. Admiral Miller, the crystalline being said, voice tinkling like glass wind chimes. May I speak with you privately? Susan nodded, and the Arbiter joined her at the window. I have existed for over 700 of your years, the Arbiter began. In that time, I have seen many species rise and fall, some through natural disaster, others through war or their own foolishness. The crystal being shifted, catching the light from Earth in rainbow patterns. The Council's approach was born of fear that younger species would repeat our mistakes. The oldest among us remember the great wars that nearly destroyed all sapient life in this sector of the galaxy. That doesn't justify exploitation, Susan said firmly. No, it does not, the Arbiter agreed, surprising her. But fear rarely leads to wisdom. We sought to control rather than guide, to dominate rather than cooperate. In doing so, we became what we once fought against. The Arbiter turned to face Susan directly. Humanity has given the galaxy something it desperately needed. A reminder that there are always alternative paths, new solutions to old problems. We just want to find our place among the stars, Susan said. We don't want to rule or be ruled, just to explore and learn. And so you shall, the Arbiter said. But know this, the Council species will be watching your progress carefully. Not from fear now, but from curiosity. What will humans do next? What will you discover that we have overlooked? In challenging us, you have awakened something long dormant in many Council species. Wonder. 2 days later, Susan, Jason, and Amy returned to Earth aboard a shuttle. As they descended through the atmosphere, they watched the council ships departing, not in defeat, but as equals beginning a new journey. In the months that followed, Earth changed rapidly. With access to advanced alien technology, clean energy quickly replaced fossil fuels. Medical breakthroughs eliminated dozens of diseases. Universities established departments of xenobiology, xenolinguistics, and interstellar relations. But perhaps, most remarkably, Earth became a symbol throughout the galaxy, the small blue planet that had stood up to the Galactic Council and demanded justice not just for itself, but for all oppressed worlds. 1 year after the confrontation in Geneva, Susan Miller stood on the observation deck of Earth's first faster-than-light vessel, the Horizon. Beside her stood Jason Carter and Amy Foster, now married after falling in love during the intense months of Project Firewall. "Ready for our first diplomatic mission?" Amy asked, holding a folder containing their itinerary, visits to 7 formerly exploited worlds to establish relations. Susan looked out at the stars, seemingly endless in their possibilities. "You know what I keep thinking about? That small piece of alien technology that fell off their ship. Such a tiny thing, but it changed everything." "Not the technology," Jason corrected her. "What changed everything was what we did with it. We saw possibilities others had missed for thousands of years." Amy nodded. The council had become complacent. They stopped looking for new ideas, new approaches. They forgot that different perspectives have value. As the ship prepared for departure, Susan thought about how close Earth had come to becoming just another resource world. Instead, humanity had not only saved itself, but helped create a more just galaxy. "Captain Miller to the bridge," came a voice over the intercom, using her new title. "We're ready for departure." Susan took one last look at Earth through the viewport. "I wonder what we'll discover out there," she said. "Whatever it is," Jason replied, "I'm sure it will surprise everyone, including us." The Horizon's engines hummed. To life, and Earth's first true starship accelerated away from its home planet. Behind it, in the vast reaches of space, 17 freed worlds began their own journeys of recovery and self-determination. Ahead lay a galaxy forever changed by humanity's refusal to surrender its independence. The Galactic Council had tried to disarm humanity. Instead, they had unleashed its greatest strengths: ingenuity, determination, and an unwavering belief that there was always another way forward, and that, more than any weapon, had left them truly speechless.